There is a forest in Oregon where if you could see what lies beneath your feet, you would realize you are standing inside a single living thing. Not a colony, not a group of separate organisms. One organism. It stretches for miles. It has been growing quietly in the dark underground for thousands of years, and you would never know it was there because almost all of its mass is invisible. Wait, one organism, that size? This is Armillaria ostoye, the honey fungus, and researchers who mapped its underground network in the Malheur National Forest estimated it covers roughly 2,400 acres, an area larger than 1,600 football fields. It may be somewhere between 2,400 and 8,650 years old. What we call a mushroom is actually just the fruiting body, the part that surfaces for a few days to scatter spores. The organism itself lives almost entirely underground as a web of thread-like structures called mycelium. And this web senses, grows, and, in a certain sense, makes decisions. That last word should bother you a little. Makes decisions. Because fungi don't have a brain, they have no neurons. And yet, in laboratory studies, researchers have observed mycelial networks change their growth patterns in response to stimuli in ways that look, uncomfortably, like problem solving. In 2000, Japanese researchers guided a slime mold, not strictly a true fungus, but studied in the same spirit of "this shouldn't be this smart," through a maze, and it found the shortest path between two food sources, effectively solving the maze without any nervous system at all. So here is the question. This video is really built around: what does it mean that Earth is already home to something that behaves like an alien intelligence and always has? Let's start with the basics, because even the basics are already strange. For most of scientific history, fungi were classified as plants. That classification was wrong, and not in a small way. Genetic analysis has shown that fungi are more closely related to animals than to plants. You and a mushroom share a more recent common ancestor than a mushroom shares with a tree. Roughly 1 billion years ago, the lineage that would eventually become fungi and animals split off from plants. Then, about 650 million years later, that shared branch split again. One side became animals, the other became fungi. In 1991 at Chernobyl, researchers began finding something growing on the walls inside the destroyed reactor, spreading specifically in the most radioactive parts of the structure. Black fungi coated the interior surfaces in a way that suggested they weren't just tolerating the radiation, it looked like they were using it. Later studies, including ones led by Ekaterina Dadachova at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, found that these fungi contain high concentrations of melanin, the same pigment found in human skin, and that this melanin appeared to help convert gamma radiation into chemical energy, a process the researchers called radiotrophism. In high radiation environments, these fungi grew faster than they did under normal conditions. Let that sit for a second. In one of the most lethal environments humanity has ever created, something wasn't just surviving, it was feeding. But this isn't the end of the strangeness. It's only the beginning. Here is where things become genuinely hard to imagine. If an organism on Earth can metabolize radiation, then the question stops being, could life survive in a hostile environment, and becomes, what even counts as hostile? NASA took this seriously enough to send fungal spores to the International Space Station specifically to test their resilience. In experiments run through the European Space Agency and NASA's own astrobiology programs, fungal spores were exposed to the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, and extreme temperature swings outside the ISS, and some of them survived. This is exactly where the idea people sometimes half-joke about, what if fungi are aliens, actually connects to a real, published scientific hypothesis, not science fiction. It's called panspermia, the idea that life, or at least its building blocks, could travel between worlds embedded in comets, asteroids, or interstellar dust, rather than arising independently on every planet. This hypothesis remains unproven and genuinely controversial among astrobiologists, Most researchers believe life on Earth almost certainly originated here through ordinary chemistry rather than arriving from elsewhere. But fungal spores, structurally, come remarkably close to an ideal candidate for such a journey. They're built to endure, resistant to desiccation, tolerant of radiation, capable of a dormant state that, in some documented cases, can last for centuries. None of this proves fungi came from space. It proves something quieter and honestly stranger, that Earth already produces organisms so resilient, so chemically alien in their survival strategies, that when scientists needed an example of what life capable of crossing the void between stars might look like, fungi were among the first organisms they turned to. If you're still here and your sense of what counts as ordinary hasn't completely collapsed yet, you'll probably want to stick around for what's next, because it only gets stranger. Because this isn't just about resilience, it's about hunting and about language. Take Cordyceps. In tropical forests lives a fungus of the genus Cordyceps, whose spores can attach to a carpenter ant. Once inside, the fungus begins to control the insect's behavior, literally altering its actions. The infected ant leaves its normal route, climbs to a specific height above the ground at a specific time of day, and clamps its jaws permanently onto the underside of a leaf. This is called the death grip behavior, and it has been documented in peer-reviewed studies, including ones published in the journal BMC Ecology. After the ant dies, the fungus's fruiting body grows out of its head and scatters new spores over the ant colony below. The fungus doesn't just kill its host. It appears to rewrite its behavior, like code, for the sake of its own reproduction. And if that sounds like something out of a science fiction film about invasive parasites, yes, that's exactly why Cordyceps became the basis for a video game and TV series about a fungal apocalypse. But the original isn't fiction. It's a real, documented part of Earth's ecosystem that has existed for millions of years. And now, about language, in the literal sense. In 2022, computer scientist Andrew Adamatsky of the University of the West of England published a study measuring the electrical impulses that travel through the mycelium of several fungal species. These impulses resembled spikes, similar to how neurons transmit signals, though far slower. Adamatsky found that these spikes clustered into something resembling words, and that different fungal species appeared to use vocabularies of varying complexity, ranging from roughly 15 to 20 recurring patterns. The researcher himself, and it's important to say this honestly, described this as more of an interesting analogy than proven language in the human sense. The scientific community is still actively debating whether these signals can even be called communication at all. But the fact that electrical activity inside a fungal network has a structure resembling the structure of language is already something future generations of mycologists will have to reckon with. If you've made it this far, and your idea of what can and can't be called intelligent has already been shaken a little, you'll probably enjoy the rest of this story too. Subscribe if you want to see where this rabbit hole goes next. Here is where it becomes hardest to imagine. Beneath most forests on Earth exists something researchers have started calling the Wood Wide Web, a term that gained popularity following the work of ecologist Suzanne Simard, who studied how mycorrhizal fungi connect the root systems of different trees, sometimes even different species. Through these fungal threads, trees have been observed exchanging carbon, nitrogen, and water. In some studies, older mother trees preferentially directed resources toward their own seedlings through these networks. Some research even suggests that chemical signals resembling distress warnings pass between connected trees when one is attacked by insects, and this appears to prompt neighboring trees to strengthen their own defenses in advance. The fungus in this picture isn't just a decomposer quietly recycling dead organic matter. It's infrastructure, a living, underground communication system that emerged roughly 400 million years before the internet, connecting organisms that would otherwise have no way of talking to each other at all. And still, we haven't reached the part that personally changed how I think about all of this. During the Devonian period, roughly 400 million years ago, long before the first trees appeared on Earth, the landscape was inhabited by structures called prototaxides. These were column-like organic towers. Some fossils reach nearly 8 meters in height and over a meter in diameter. For decades, paleontologists debated exactly what they were: algae, lichen, or astonishingly giant fungi. A chemical analysis of carbon isotopes in the fossils, published in the journal Geology in 2007 by a team led by C. Kevin Boyce, tipped the balance of evidence toward fungi, organisms that fed by decomposing surrounding organic matter rather than generating energy through photosynthesis the way plants do. If this interpretation is correct, then the tallest living organisms on Earth, hundreds of millions of years before the first forest existed, weren't plants. They were fungi. Silent, motionless towers looming over a landscape where leaves didn't even exist yet. And despite all of this, how little we actually know. According to estimates by mycologists based on environmental DNA analysis, published in a landmark 2017 study in the journal Microbiology Spectrum, Earth may be home to somewhere between 2.2 and 3.8 million fungal species. Of these, fewer than 150,000 have been formally described. That means roughly 95 to 97% of the fungal kingdom is simply unknown to science. Not extinct, not hidden on some other planet. Just here, unnamed, growing in the soil right beneath your feet, undiscovered. We have more detailed maps of the surface of Mars than we have a complete picture of the organisms sharing this planet with us right now. So let's return for a moment to that forest in Oregon. Somewhere beneath those trees, a single organism has been alive since before the pyramids, since before written language existed, sensing its environment, redirecting its own growth, doing something that, if you saw it sped up, you might just call thinking. It was never an alien. That was always the wrong question. The real discovery is stranger than that. We didn't need to search space for an intelligence built on different chemistry, one that survives where nothing should survive, communicates in a language without words, spreads across areas too vast to comprehend. It was already here. It has been here the whole time, quietly, underground, older than almost everything we consider ancient, which leaves only one question worth ending on. If something this different from us has been sharing this planet with us since before animals even had brains capable of noticing it, what else, right now, are we walking past without seeing? Which discovery about fungi surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to go further down this rabbit hole, there's more waiting for you below.